Hi, my name's Joe Hale. I work here at the Dreamland, and it's my pleasure to welcome you here tonight. Whether you're joining us live or you're going to be tuning in later on YouTube or NCTV's web channel or the website of the Dreamland, we're just glad you're with us and glad you're joining us tonight. For our latest iteration of Dreamland Storytelling, this is a program that we're really proud of here at the Dreamland. It's been a little challenging to put this iteration together, but I think you're really going to enjoy it. I mean, you're going to hear stories tonight that are funny, that are sad, that are exciting, that are provocative, and some are going to be really poignant that'll bring tears to your eyes, I guarantee it. But we're so pleased that the theme running through this is it's all Nantucketers telling these stories tonight. And they've all got a theme of silver linings. Again, thank you very much for being here. It's my pleasure to welcome you. I want to thank Bonnie Levison, who helped us generate this idea initially. We want to have many more of these programs going forward. Hopefully, when this whole theater will be full of you, we can't wait to welcome you back to the Dreamland. Now it is my great pleasure to introduce who on January 1st will be the new interim director of the Dreamland, who's been with us for 3.5 years as our director of programming and rentals. Please join me in welcoming Alicia Carney.
Thanks, Joe. COVID times have to wipe off this microphone, so I want to thank you all again for being part of our program this evening. We are so grateful to our community members who've come forward to tell us their stories, and this is a program that we will continue to pursue with Dreamland, whether it's virtual or in person, as Joe had mentioned. So without further ado, I would like to formally thank and introduce you to Bonnie Levison. She works with the Moth and NPR. She's an incredible coach, and she worked with our storytellers this evening to help them develop their stories. At this time, Bonnie, please join us on stage. Thank you very much.
Hello. I'm going to remove my mask, try to be COVID safe here. We thank the audience for being a little patient with us because we have to wipe down, which we will be doing between each speaker. Sorry, I didn't have my packet ready. But I want to thank Joe and Alicia for letting us continue this program. Let's see if we can get this cleaned off here. Okay, we are COVID safe now. I am so glad to be welcoming you all to Dreamland Storytelling. As you can see from the sign, it's not quite, if I open it up a little, do you see it? Do you see it? Storytelling. So it's welcome to Dreamland Storytelling. And as you heard, this is our fourth program, actually. We started this whole series last fall with the hopes that we would get to continue the storytelling shows from local Nantucketers every couple of months, but of course COVID had its way with us and cut us short last spring. But we talked about it and we're like, come on, man, let's do this. And so we are coming to you virtually from the incredible jewel that is the Dreamland stage. And I'm just so excited because we found 6 wonderful Nantucketers who are going to share with you tonight personal, true stories from their lives. And they're all inspired by the idea of silver linings. And so when you think about silver linings, you think about every dark cloud has a silver lining. It's something positive and optimistic. And I love that. And so I decided, but where did that phrase come from? I actually didn't know. So of course I went to Wikipedia, which I wish I'd had in college, and I looked up silver linings. And in fact, yes, it's every cloud has a silver lining. And the phrase came from a poet. And I thought that is just so lovely, a poem about silver linings. I bet it's just the sweetest, most lovely poem imaginable, like, you know, roses are red, violets are blue, something like that. No, that is not what the poem was about. The poem was written in the early 1600s at a time when I'm sure they didn't have pandemics. And it was called Comus, and it's by a poet named John Milton. And Comus was this monstrous guy who stole a woman who was walking through the forest. By the way, never walk through a forest. Nothing good comes from it. And a woman, and tried to, you know, harm her. And she looked up at the sky. I want to make sure I read this line correctly. And she says, with hope as she saw a cloud appear, did a sable cloud turn forth her silver lining on the night. And in fact, that was the sign that she would be okay, because the silver lining was the glow around the edge of the cloud that comes when the sun is coming up behind it. And so it means hope. It means optimism. And so behind every cloud, there is a silver lining. And you're going to hear 6 people share stories about that tonight. And what I challenged them all to do was to think of a moment in their lives inspired by that idea of a silver lining, and to build a story around it, to think about how that experience affected them and share that story. So you're going to hear 6 very different stories. And I was thinking, so if I were to tell a story, what does silver lining inspire me to think about? And the first thought was, well, wearing a mask, not fun. No, not fun. But being mistaken recently with my face entirely covered for someone 10 years younger is a silver lining. That is a silver lining. And you might want to tell a story about that. Another example, yesterday, my friend Holly and I decided, wouldn't it be wonderful if we take a lovely, long, energetic nature walk through the moors to Altar Rock, the highest point on the island, which, by the way, is, I think, about 6 feet or 6 inches higher than I am right now, but it is still the highest point on the island. And we make our way to Altar Rock, and we're looking around, and there around us we hear the sounds of nature and many, many gunshots. And we realize that hunting season had just started. This is not good. We are not wearing orange. However, I did realize yesterday that, to my surprise, I am able to run a mile through brush and difficult terrain in a hunched position while praying to God for my life. Silver lining. You see how it works? It's a wonderful thing. Behind every cloud is a silver lining. And you guys are going to hear 6 wonderful stories tonight. And what's going to happen is, and I apologize, but because it's COVID, I am going to wipe down the microphone between each person. So it might take up a little bit of time, but we want to make sure that we're very, very safe here. And so I am going to introduce each storyteller just with their name, and then after you hear from them, I'm going to tell you a little bit about them. And so I'm hoping you guys will give us lots of virtual love from a distance. The only people in the theater right now are the storytellers and the camera crew. So we have a very small group here, but I know that group is going to give us a lot of love, and I hope you all out there in the virtual world have a lot of love. And I did want to say one other thing, that, well, it is Stroll. This whole thing is in honor of Stroll, so I guess I have to wear, I love stupid hats, but I don't think Santa hat is so stupid. But in honor of Stroll, I wish you happy holidays. I'm going to come in between everybody, but I feel like this is a bit of a Dreamland and Nantucket birthday present to you. Main Street looks like Santa Land. For those of you who aren't on an island, it's absolutely beautiful, and it just warms your heart. And so I hope that the stories that you hear will warm your heart as well. So without further ado, I'd like to bring our first storyteller to the stage, and I'd love to hear your virtual applause, but please welcome to the stage Lori Richards. Let me get it a little higher for you. There we go.
I arrived on Nantucket for the first time in a private plane, which is really a wonderful way to travel. I was with the man that I would eventually marry. It was February, it was cold, dark, and dreary, and I absolutely loved it. I had never seen a more beautiful place in my life. We were looking for a place for him to rent for the summer, for him and his 4 children. So we came the following summer, and eventually we got engaged and married here. When things fell apart for him in Connecticut with his business, we moved with our 1-year-old daughter Caroline to Nantucket full-time. The following summer, our son Mookie was born at Nantucket Cottage Hospital. Things did not improve for us financially. We had to sell our house, and we got divorced. At that point, he had not worked for several years. I had seen people do the Nantucket Shuffle, and I knew I didn't want to do it. So I took the money I had and I bought a small condo on Nobodere Farm Road. The following year was the housing crisis. I was unable to pay my mortgage, and the bank took our home. My children were 7 and 9, and we were homeless. I can't tell you how terrifying it is to not know where you're going to live with your children. We moved 17 times. All of our belongings were in someone's basement or in the back of my car. At one point, Mookie and I were in one house, and Caroline was in another. Everyone helped when they could. We had a friend who let us live in their investment property home. We got there, we put up the Christmas tree. 10 days later, the house was foreclosed on. We had to move again. A realtor friend found us a winter rental that was affordable. I was able to stay there for 8 months. At that time, I was a teller at a bank, and for 8 months, every day, I asked every single customer who came in if they knew of a place where we could live. There was nothing. Our winter rental was up, and a friend decided to take us in. So we lived there, and I finally found a year-round rental, and it was beautiful. We moved in, and we made it so cozy, and the children absolutely loved it. I could see them sigh with relief. They could have their friends over. They stood up a little taller. They felt proud. And 2 months later, that house sold. When I told my children that we had to move again, my sweet, fierce Caroline said, "I didn't really like it here anyway." I just kept putting one foot in front of the other. All I wanted was a safe place for my children to live. I wanted to be able to stay on Nantucket. That was the only home they knew. At some point, I was unable to feed us. And I walked into Annie's and said, "I need food, but I don't have any money." She fed us for the entire winter. Everybody helped when they could. People drove my children. They fed my children. They coached my children. Everywhere I went, people were trying to help us. They wanted us to succeed. The whole community helped every single day. There were people who took my children to do things that I was unable to take them to do. Concerts, beach barbecues. One man would take my child fishing all the time. I was trying to throw the ball with Mookie one day, and I was absolutely terrible, and the man across the street came over with his mitt and threw the ball for over an hour. I just kept putting one foot in front of the other, loving my children fiercely and trying to do the best I could for them. Eventually, my best friend said, "I can't bear to watch it any longer. My husband and I are going to build you a cottage that you can rent on our property until your children are done with high school." So we moved in there, and I took a deep breath and tried to get back on my feet. We were happy. We had our friends next door. Everything was great. But as my kids approached the end of high school, I knew that my best friend would want to sell this house at some point. So when I saw something on Facebook about an affordable housing lottery, I applied, and we were eligible. So Mookie and I went to the library for the lottery. I put on my best dress and my special mala beads, and we walked into the Athenaeum and sat down with every other person who was eligible for this house. And we sat there nervous and jittery and scared and hoped to hear our number. I was eligible for 3 of the homes. The first number was not mine, and neither was the second. But the third number they called was ours. And Mookie and I felt so much relief. We cried and hugged each other. So many people on Nantucket were just crying for joy for us. I am the proud owner of a home on Nantucket. My children are done with high school, and they have gone out into the world and spread good things and kindness that came from the way people in this community treated us. We were always valued, even though we had no money. And my children take that and make the world a better place. I'm a wash ashore, but I feel like I am a proud member of this community. I am so blessed to be here. Thank you so very much.
Lori Richards. One more time for Lori. Oh my God. Wow. Lori, thank you so much. That was truly a Christmas story, wasn't it? I get very emotional. I always say that I need tissues with this job. Thank you for your honesty and your candor. Really, that was a Christmas gift to us all. And a reminder of what a wonderful community that we are all a part of, and also the ongoing issues of homelessness and housing. So thank you so much for that. For all of you who don't know Lori, Lori runs a photography business here on the island called Pixel Perfect, and she also manages a Pilates studio called Core. And so, look for her in all of those places. Thank you, Lori. So our next storyteller coming to the stage is going to do his story in parts. He's got 4 different parts. So he's going to give you, you're going to see him 4 different times, and he's going to do short vignettes, all little stories that will all come together at the end. And I'll tell you a little bit about him after each of his vignettes. But I would love for you all, he's probably a familiar face to many of you, but we're so lucky to have him. Please welcome to the stage the one and only John Shea.
Thank you, Bonnie. I knew her as Bonnie Block. She was the walk of the block. And her brothers and her mother and her father. And oh, my God, my pleasure to be here. So, Lori, wow. You found your calling. I didn't have a calling, but I knew my father said, John, son, well, I'll tell you why we're alive, boy. We are alive to find out the gifts that God has given us and to make this world a better place, like your kids have gone out to do. And the question is, what were my gifts, if I had any at all, and what was I supposed to do? So I grew up in Springfield, Massachusetts. I went to high school. I went to, like every other kid in America, and I played sports. I played football. I was on the debating team, and I loved to argue and debate, and I did all that. And I applied to college, and I ended up getting accepted to Bates College. And Bates College is up in Lewiston, Maine. And I went to Bates on a football and a debating scholarship. Thank you, Bates. And so my freshman year, everything went pretty well. Sophomore year, football in the fall, I injured my knee, and I injured it really badly. And so badly that I'm kind of on crutches, and I'm hobbling around on the side of the field. And after the game that night, the captain of the team, I'm living in the animal house, is called Roger Bill. And, I find out there I am good at certain things, that after the games, I can get really drunk really fast. And I can pile all the empty bottles and cans into trash cans, and I can run naked down the halls and knock them all out like we're bowling, and I can make a fool of myself. And the guys laugh, and they pour me more beer, and so I'm good at that. But can I do that for a living? I wonder. And then in my sophomore year, my knee goes. So I think, okay, John, now what are you going to do about that? But the captain of the team says, okay, man, so you're useless to us on the field, but we hear that you make good fake IDs. So why don't you get your fake ID, and why don't you go buy the beer for after the game tonight, John? And so I think, okay, I'll do that, Cap. You set? You bet, sir. So, but my fake ID is over in the debate room, which is in the back of the theater. So I go across campus on my crutch, make it over to the back of the theater, and I open the door of the theater, and I'm looked before I get to the bake office, and there's a bunch of people sitting over there on this side. And as I'm going to get into my backpack, I hear Lavinia Schaefer say to me, Mr. Shea, what are you doing? I can't tell her what I'm doing. I can't tell her I'm getting my fake ID to buy beer for the guys illegally, in the animal house. So I say, nothing. And she says, well, then come here, sit down. And she says, read this. And I sit at this table with about 12 other people. I don't know who these people are. I've never seen any of them. They're not on the football team for sure. And Lavinia Schaefer is a 6-foot-tall woman in her 80s with this white, fountain of hair, and is the kind of woman you do not say no to. And so I do read this thing. I don't know what I'm reading, but I read it along, and I sit next to her, and she says, turn the page, look over here. And when it's over, she says, congratulations, you got the part. I said, what? She said, well, do you know what you just read? And I said, no. She said, well, that's called a play. Have you ever been on a play? I said, no. And she said, well, that was a play by William Shakespeare. Have you heard of him? And I said, well, yes. Have you ever read anything by Shakespeare before, Mr. Shea? I said, no. She said, well, congratulations. You just got the lead in the next production of the Robinson Players. It's called Much Ado About Nothing, and you're playing Benedict in our play. And we'll see you promptly at 5 o'clock on Monday for rehearsal. Now, I get the fake ID and I go buy the beer. We have a hell of a party that night. But I'll tell you something. On Monday, I show up at this rehearsal. And I've still got my crutch on. But we have a month of rehearsal, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, maybe the silver lining here is that I'm going to lose my football scholarship because I can't play, but maybe I could get it if I, kind of join forces with these, I guess they're actors, And I discover in the course of this rehearsal that the theater is the perfect synthesis of football and debating. That instead of a coach, you got a director. Instead of a locker room, you got a dressing room. And instead of plays, you have a play. But it's better than football because I get to kiss the girl. I get to speak in iambic pentameter. I learn how to fence and duel, and I have the time of my life. And so I change my major. We have full houses, unlike we have tonight, and I love it. And I feel like I got my calling. I know what I want to do. I changed my major from government and law and all these other things into theater and English and drama. And I do that my senior year. And then my senior year is approaching to a quick end, and I realize, what do I do now? The roads psychologically do not go from Lewiston, Maine to Broadway. How am I going to get there? And I'll tell you that later. Thank you.
John Shea, one more time. Okay, we have suspense. This is officially suspense. I love that. And all I know is, for all of you who know, I think you do all know John. He's amazing, incredible body of work. One thing that is not debatable is that he is a talented guy. And we love Lavinia. Thank you, Lavinia, for helping you discover acting. My God. But I brought this because I have to, the statistics are so incredible. I think you've done more than this, John. But I'm just going to say he's an Emmy Award winning actor, director, producer, writer. He's done 50 movies, 5 TV series, 20 plays. I'm pretty sure you've done more than 20 plays. On Nantucket alone, I think you've done 300. But we're so grateful for all that you do. Awesome. Okay, next coming to the stage is Lisa Parker.
My whole body was pulsing with exhaustion as I tried to crawl out from under the covers without waking my sleeping, mostly angry new husband so I could get dressed for jury duty. I had already been a no-show 3 times, and the notices were getting increasingly more threatening, suggesting possible jail time if I didn't show up this time. I walked out to the corner on 94th Street. That's where Abe was. Abe, who was in his tin can coffee cart that looked as if it was steaming him from the inside. Abe never ever looked up from his counter, but somehow my sesame seed bagel with way too much cream cheese was always ready and waiting. By about 8:15, I was flying down the FDR in my cab, swerving through traffic, and I was slouched in the back seat, just exhausted. Exhausted from too much work, too much stress, and mostly from my difficult marriage. I closed my eyes in the back seat of the cab and envisioned myself sitting on those stiff wooden benches with all my anonymous fellow New Yorkers and finally eating that bagel. My eyes opened as my cab jerked down Center Street. I saw a funnel of black smoke billowing up in the air. "It's a plane," my cab driver said, not particularly concerned. I went to a payphone to call my office. I was a journalist for NBC News, and I never left my house without my reporter's notebook in my bag. I called to my office, and Jim, the assignment editor, answered the phone in his usual cheeriness, and I said, "I think something just hit the World Trade Center. When the crew office gets in, send a camera down." I made my way to a green space that was really just a center divider with greenery, and I started talking to people who had come out of the building. I must have talked to 30 people that day. All the details were very murky. Some people thought it was maybe a news helicopter that had hit the plane. Others suggested maybe it was a glider. Suddenly I was distracted by noise overhead, and I looked up and I saw another plane. I watched as it tipped its wings and then impossibly barreled into the other tower of the World Trade Center, setting off an explosion of fire. It was incredible to see this plane gut one of the biggest buildings in New York City. Fear and panic set in, as it was pretty clear that this was no longer just some terrible accident. I started to run towards the buildings. I was about 2 blocks away, and I came across a police barricade that had been haphazardly set up. I told the policeman that I was with NBC, showed him my badge. He paused a moment, and then he let me slip by. He said as I walked by, "Just don't tell anybody I let you through." There was nobody to tell. I was now walking down an empty street in New York City. It was Fulton Street, and my shoulder was brushing up against the walls of St. Paul's Chapel. It was actually eerily empty, except for these odd small scraps of paper that were just floating through the air. It was sort of like I was in the middle of a ticker tape parade with nobody watching. I took a few more steps, and then I don't know why, but I just stopped. And I thought to myself, if I keep walking towards these buildings, I may just die. I took a hard swallow because I was disappointed. I wasn't brave enough to keep going. And I turned back. Just as I turned, I felt a little, a quiver underneath my feet, and it made me look back. And I saw with my eyes that enormous, monstrous building do a wave. And I realized that that building was coming down, and I was way too close. I turned on my heels as quickly as I could and started to run as fast as I could in my jury duty skirt. I looked over my shoulder, and I saw this giant black ball of debris barreling down the street towards me. It was like a tsunami of black ashes and metal and God knows what else. The force of the building coming down lifted me off my feet, and I was thrown to the ground. I landed on my shoulder. I hit my head. I quickly scrambled to get up because that thing was coming. I scrambled to my feet, and I didn't really know where I was. I was all alone. Suddenly, out of nowhere, this man's arms came and pulled me towards him. He lifted me up over this center divider, and we were scrambling between cars. People had just left their cars, abandoned. We kept trying to kind of get through all this, but it was coming. We finally just crouched down on the ground in an embrace. And he said, "Pull your shirt over your face." And I tried. I tucked my chin under my shirt, and he said, "Take a deep breath." Suddenly, it was just black, the darkest black I had ever seen. Images of people that I love started flipping through my mind like a slideshow. And I thought of my husband. We were about to celebrate our first anniversary in Nantucket. And my sweet grandmother. I loved her so. I was completely consumed by that mass of ashes. It was sort of like someone took the thickest black felt blanket and shrink-wrapped it around me and then jammed it down my throat. It got into every crevice, my ears, my mouth, my nose. And I went to sort of a calm place. I can remember just sort of settling down a little and thinking to myself, this must be death. This must be what it is. It just goes black. After what felt like forever, I started to cough. And we both got up and started walking amazingly out of the debris. Things just started to clear. We were covered in that dust. We must have looked like two gray ghosts gliding by, hand in hand. When we finally got to Soho, this man whose hand I'd been holding this whole time stopped and turned and finally looked at me. He said, "I'm going this way." And he was just covered also, all disheveled. He was boyishly handsome, not very tall, had kind green eyes. "I'm going to Rockefeller Center," I said. "I just left them." I was watching him. I just left them. What are you saying? "I was walking into the World Trade Center to meet my coworkers, and I just left. I should have stayed. I should have stayed to help them." He was crumbling. His face was crumbling. His body started to fold. But you helped me. You helped me. And I will never forget it. We're both trying not to cry. I said, "What is your name?" "Kevin." "I'm Lisa. I'm Lisa Parker." We both kind of laughed at the absurdity of meeting this way. He fished into his wallet to get out a business card, and I could feel my body tensing, realizing that I was going to have to let go of this man. "Thank you," I said. I didn't do anything, but he did. He did everything. People often ask me after they hear my story whether I really would have died that day. Did Kevin really save me? And I know that I was the one who saved myself first, doing the job that I love. But Kevin, he was the second one to save me. He saved me from being alone on the most terrifying day of my life. He showed me that I am not invisible. I am not lost. And sometimes all we need is just one beautiful stranger to help show us the way. Thank you.
Lisa Parker, everybody. Lisa, thank you so much. You know, one of the things that I truly, truly love about storytelling is that we don't live each other's lives. But when we hear stories from people's experiences, from completely different lives, at the core of every story is an emotion, and those emotions connect us all around the world. But 9/11 was one of those experiences that we all shared. And what came from it truly were, from that very, very dark day, were moments of kindness and acts of kindness. And it's such a reminder that there are a lot of people like Kevin out there in the world. And I think we have to hold on to those things. Truly a silver lining story. So thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, are you ready? We are going to continue with our Vignette King, John Shea. Vignette number 2.
So, Lisa Parker, wow. I was back in Levison, Maine, and I had found the theater. I think I found my calling. I wasn't sure, but I'll tell you this, that Lavinia Schaefer inspired me. And yes, thank you, Lavinia, for changing my life. And it turns out that was her last play. She had one more play to do, and she cast me the male lead in Medea. I played Jason opposite the young actress who played Medea, and we did this Greek tragedy, and it was her last play, and she finally retired, and they ended up naming the theater after Lavinia Schaefer. And a new director came in, or head of the theater, and he cast me as Marat and Marat Sade, and I got to be completely naked on stage in the 60s. Of course, that was a great thing to be. And then it was my senior year, and I did a lot of I started writing, and I had to write a thesis and directing things, and I had a lot of fun doing that. But then, it's like the freeway is ending and you're coming to a desert. Like I was going to graduate, and there was a brick wall ahead of me, and I was smashing into it quickly, because how do you go from Lewiston, Maine, and you've only been acting for a couple of years, to a career? You're going to support yourself, and you're going to find your way in the world. And honestly, I couldn't figure out. But one day I went to the library. I rarely went to the library, but I have to say I went down there that day, and I found the New York Times. I did always love the New York Times. And in the arts and leisure section on the front page, there was a photograph of a play that they were doing in New Haven, and it was at the Yale Repertory Company. And I read the article, and it was a Molière play, and I was talking about the Yale Drama School actors who are, and I was like, what, Yale Drama? I wonder what that is. So I asked the head of the theater, and he said, I don't know, I guess they must have a school there. So I wrote to, in those days, before internet, before cell phones, before anything, I kind of looked it up in the phone book, and I wrote to the Yale Drama School. They sent me their brochure. I sent my application and they said, okay, in January, on the 4th of January, drive down and come in and audition for us. So I said, fine, to myself. I got in my Volkswagen bus. I drove with my girlfriend at the time, 7 hours in the snow from Lewiston down, all the way to New Haven, Connecticut. And I walked into this massive theater, makes the Dreamland look like, well, Bennett Hall, 70-foot flies, a big balcony, 1,000 seats. And somewhere in the dark, there were 5 or 6 people with the little lights, the head of the school and the head of the departments. And I walked out into this massive stage. It was like a Broadway theater. And I knew that I had to prepare a serious piece and a comic piece. I did the comic piece from Shakespeare, from that Much Ado About Nothing. And I ended up doing the immortal line, "The world must be peopled." Then I did Jimmy Porter from Look Back in Anger, and I said, well, thank you very much. And I started to go. And they said, oh, Mr. Shea, excuse us, sorry. Your improv, please. And I said, improv? I said, I'm sorry, I didn't know about the improv. They said, no, that's why it's called an improv. We don't tell you about it, Mr. Shea. You have 30 seconds to decide what you're going to do. And I said, we'll meet Stephen Mandello. And sure enough, the door opens, and a guy comes walking across this mile-long stage, like a par 5, golf course. And he comes across the stage, and I say, Steve, hey, man, I'm John. He goes, yeah. I said, so what do you want to do? And he says, no, man, I'm in the school. This is your audition. What do you want to do? 15 seconds, Mr. Shea. I was like, okay. All right, 2 guys, 2 brothers. We're the Wright brother. It's Kitty Hawk. It's Kitty Hawk. We're the Wright brothers. And I say, all right, Orville, you pull up on the propeller. I'll push down, and you jump in, brother. And I'm going to push you. I'm going to push you to flight. And he says, all right. And we mime building the first airplane, and we got this whole thing going in the wings, a double banger thing. And he gets in the middle, and I say, 1, 2, and I got my propeller. He's got his end. You lift up, I'll push down, and 3. And I go into a full squat there on this stage with the spotlight hitting me. And my 1969-70 blue jeans split up the crotch in the middle. And the happy Valentine hearts underwear that I got goes flashing out across the stage. Little red hearts on, I don't know the last time I did the laundry with those underpants, but they were my good luck underpants. And I'm down in the full squat. And I look down, and he looks at me, and he's like, I said, Orville, don't you dare give up on me. And so I push him off the stage. And as I do, of course, I walk like this, you know. Good luck, Orville, you did it! We did it, man, we did it. And I hear tittering and laughing and like, oh, shucks, and, you know, like, oh, my God, and women looking away in horror, you know, in the audience, and I start to go, and they go, no, Mr. Shea, but come here, please, all right? And there's a stairway that I hadn't seen before, and I go up the stairway, and I go up the middle aisle, and I'm standing there, and I say, yes, well, how can I help you? And they say, how can we help you? And I said, well, do you have a costume department, like with a needle and thread? And they said, you know, we do, and they gave me directions, and that's how I got into Yale Drama School. And later, I'm going to tell you how I got to Broadway, and it's not any prettier. Okay.
Oh, John Shea, you never cease to amaze. Didn't know that story, but John would like you to know that he now only wears pants with Lycra. That is something very important to him. And he has many, many credits. And I think you guys probably know these movies, but he also wrote and directed the movies Southie and Gray Lady. I wonder where he got the name Gray Lady. But I would like to add to his credits that he is also a flasher, evidently. Not on purpose. That was awesome. Oh, my gosh. We're learning a lot. That's what I love about storytelling. You never know what lies behind somebody. Okay, our next storyteller coming to the stage. Is he ready? Are you ready? Yes. Please welcome Deepak, I hope I say this correctly, Tapa. Deepak Tapa.
Namaste, hello everyone. I'm Deepak. I'm originally from Nepal. I decided 15 years before to figure out my freedom of the life and opportunity. 2006 end of the year, I decided to leave the country Nepal. Then I went to the India, and I went to the India to Singapore and Malaysia, then back to Singapore. When I come to the Singapore, anyhow I got a visa for the Costa Rica, and I have to leave the Singapore then. Then when I leave the Singapore in 2007, so I went to the Costa Rica. When I come to the Costa Rica, I stay 17 days in Costa Rica. My dream and my brain, I have to go United States of America. This is my dream. So anyhow, I have to make it. So from that, from Costa Rica, I don't have no passport, no nothings. We are a couple people decided to leave the Costa Rica after 17 days. And we, after 17 days, we left the Costa Rica by foot. There is no road, there is no food, there is no clothes, no money. And then one pair of clothes, I have it. Then we are decided to leave Costa Rica. Most of the time we walk in a night because we don't have nothings. And then I went to the Nicaragua and Honduras, Guatemala, Mexico. Then when I came to the Mexico, I want to mention to that I don't have nothing. There is a federal police. They caught us. They called me. When they called me, they're asking me paper, everything. We never talk. I never talk anything with them because I'm scared to my life. They return back to the Nepal again. Then I don't made it my dream. So in Mexico, after a while, those police officers talking each other and said, hey, we caused the Taliban. Then after that times, I was scared so much because I'm not from the Taliban. Because of I never get a shave my beard. 6 months. It took a time 6 months to come Costa Rica to Mexico, and I never cut my hair. One pair of very dirty clothes, and then I start to speak. Say I'm not from the Taliban. I'm from Nepal, and they say, all right, why you come here? And many questions, and they take me the immigration. When they take me immigration, they give me the paper, 1 month stay in Mexico. Then I have to leave the Mexico. And when I got out from the immigration, after 15 days, I don't have no money, no shoes, one pair of same clothes. Then I start begging some money, make a phone calls to the street. When I got asking people, hey, can you help me? I just know the one in Spanish word that time, por favor, ayúdeme, just like that. and they are scared with me because I have a long beard and long hair, and dirty clothes. And anyhow, I made it like make a $3 begging with the people in the street. Then I make a phone call to my cousin in America. Then he's sending some money to the Mexico. Then I bought some clothes and shave my beard, haircut, and get the bus to come to border of the America. It's called Matamoros. When I came to the Matamoros, I respectfully enter the America. I don't jump. I don't cross border illegally. That means jumping, running away. When I came inside and asking for the asylum, which is called political asylum, to stay in America. And after that, they took us interview. They took me interview. Then they said, okay, you have to go to the detention center, and then you have to forward your case over there. Then I never been handcuffed in my hand my entire life. And they handcuffed me my hand, my waist, and my leg. I start crying so much because I never happens in my life that. Then they took me to the detention centers. When I come to the detention centers, I filed my case. Every day, I'm waiting for what's going to happen next day. I have no idea. I've been there 365 days. The immigration judge approved my story. He believed me, and he gave me the papers to live in America, which is called green card. So I came to the Baltimore from there. When I get out from detention centers, even I don't have no money. I have $2 in my pocket. That's what I have only. Anyhow, I made it to the Baltimore. I stayed there Baltimore 2 years almost. Then I'm back. Then some of my sister friends in Nantucket, and we connected each other in a Facebook. Then she called me, you might be like it here, come over here Nantucket. When she said immediately, March 19, 2010, I decided to come to the Nantucket. And when I came, and I feel like this is the place what I'm looking for. I can't imagine, I have no word. This is the place on earth. It's totally beautiful, amazing. Then I start working here, landscaping. Then immigration stuff is still going on. And 2016, finally I got U.S. citizenship. And I'm so proud of that. I'm so happy when I got this United States citizen, and full of the tear in my eyes. This is the happiness tear, guys. Wherever in my life, that's what I want. It's called dream come true, and karma also support to me. Then I went to the Nepal and get married, and I have a wife now and 2-year-old son. And I love Nantucket. This is the place I never want to leave. I never decided to leave this Nantucket. This is beautiful, 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 amazing people. They help each other. They know each other. Most of the people know. Then I'm managing the Walters Dailies downstate. And so I will say the thanks for my boss, which is the Scott Cop. I always call Papa Scott. He helped me a lot. He teach me a lot. He support me all the times. And I really appreciate for him. He's a great guy I ever met in my life. I would say still Papa Scott. And thank you, guys. Thank you for sharing my story. Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Oh, Deepak, that is absolutely incredible. Thank you so much. He walked for 6 months from Costa Rica to the United States with one article of clothing and one pair of shoes. I guess they weren't very good shoes. And it's just an incredible story. And it's such a reminder. We have no idea about all the many amazing people that are on this island. But if you guys ever go into Walters, I hope you'll say hi to Deepak. Deepak, you are a gift to us. I hope you know that. We are privileged to know you. Okay, I'm going to try and keep going here. Please welcome to the stage, Chris Farley.
Thanks, Bonnie. Deepak, that was some story. Heartwarming. Hi, everybody. Can I just put this up a little bit? Okay. So in the early summer of 2013, I was looking through the Inquirer and Mirror. I came upon an ad for Swim Across America. I didn't know what that was, but it was clearly a fundraiser. They were looking for people to come down to the jetties in August and jump in the water and raise funds for something called PASCON, P-A-S-C-O-N. It was an acronym for Palliative and Supportive Care on Nantucket. I didn't know what it was, as I said. But the thing that caught my attention was that they were saying you could do a 1-mile swim. Now, back in an earlier life, in my 20s, I had been active in triathlons and, in fact, had done the Ironman in Hawaii, which had a 2.4-mile swim. That was an earlier life, but I wanted to see if I could maybe swim a mile again. So that was the impetus for me to sign up for the Swim Across America. Now, they did say that you had to raise funds in addition to the entry fee, which is a little unusual, but that's okay. I put the arm on my friends and my family, and I got the money together. And so I figured that the day would come and I would train minimally and I would go down and I would swim and that would be it. So when the day came, the last Sunday in August, I got in my car, drove down to the jetties, and you go down Bathing Beach Road. And when I came around the corner, there was a gigantic tent up there, which I wasn't expecting for a little fundraiser. And as I got closer, I could hear music and I could hear Holly Finnegan's voice over the microphone. And then I parked and I went inside and there was kids everywhere. There was hundreds of people running around in bathing suits and colored caps. And so I registered and checked in. They said, "Oh, you're a first-timer, aren't you?" I said, "Well, yeah." I said, "Well, then you're a rookie." "Okay, well, then you got to go get your tattoo." "A tattoo?" "Yeah, on my arm. It said rookie." So now I'm a rookie and I'm in there going to swim. Then they herded us all in under the tent and because they had a little ceremony before we'd go out and do the swim. I didn't know what was going to go on. So Jimmy Pignato, who was running Swim Across America, got up there and talked about how they help people who have illnesses. And he says, "Now I want to introduce you to Claudia Cronenberg." Claudia was a photographer on the island. And she gets up, and all of a sudden I hear this cheering going from over here in the corner of the tent. And the cheering is like all these people wearing these shirts that said Claudia's Cronies. And they're cheering like mad for Claudia. And I thought, my God, she's got her whole team here, like 25 people, all ages, all excited for Claudia. And then Claudia starts talking, and she starts talking about breast cancer. So that shocked me. I said, "Okay, what's going on?" And she said, "Well, I'm fighting this fight, and I'm going to make it." And they're all cheering for her. And I felt like, wow, there's a lot more going on here than I expected. I walked out of there, and I went down, and I did my swim, and mingled with the people afterwards. I went back to my car, and I said, that woman, she's pretty courageous. And to get up there and tell that story like she did. But I said, her life, I'm sure, has turned on a dime with that. And thank God it hasn't happened to my family, the Farley family. I mean, I've got 3 beautiful children, all work in town. My wife works at the MSPCA taking care of the doggies when people board them. And on top of everything, we have a wedding coming up just in 6 weeks in October. Our oldest son, Bill, is going to get married to a nurse. We're having it right up at Sankaty Head Golf Club. Boy, it's going to be great. So everything is good for us. So October comes along, and we have our welcoming party that Thursday night before the Saturday wedding. And so we bring everybody to our house. I want to just show you this picture right here. This was us the day of that welcoming dinner. There was my wife, Sarah, and Timmy, and Bill, and my daughter, Sarah, and there's the old man, me. We were welcome. There's nothing wrong in this world, and so we're going to go to the ceremony, then we're going to go to the reception at Sankaty Head, and the day comes. We do that. We're in that beautiful building. Sarah dances with her son to Louis Armstrong, and then we sit down and we start to have the dinner, and we're eating away at this great meal, and I look over, and Sarah's looking at her plate, and she's not eating. I said, "Honey, what's up with that?" She says, Chris, I can't swallow. I'm having a hard time getting this food down. I said, well, maybe you're just nervous at the excitement of the day. She says, yeah, maybe so. Okay, so fine. So we get through the day. The next day, we have the big beer party at our house, and everybody's there playing horseshoes and drinking beers. And at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I look around for Sarah. She's nowhere to be found. I go in the house. I go upstairs. She's in her daughter's bed at 4 in the afternoon asleep. I said, okay, what's going on? She says, there's something wrong. I don't know what it is. So I said, okay, so let's figure it out. So we get to the doctor's. We find Dr. Horst, who has a house in Nantucket. He's going to do an endoscopy. 3 weeks later, we're over at Nantucket Community Hospital. We go in, and she goes in. It's like a colonoscopy. It's like in your back out, and you're in the chairs. And then here comes Dr. Horst out. He's got a couple of pictures he's going to show us. Okay, let's go. And he says, okay, this first picture, this is her esophagus. And he shows us a picture that to me looks like corned beef hash. That can't be like an internal organ. It's all mushy. And he says, okay, and then this one, this is a picture of looking down into her stomach. And what I see in there, it looks like a gigantic, you ever seen a rotten egg where it has sort of that milky white and gray? It's sort of like that right here. And then he says, I really hope those two are not connected. I said, well, I mean, how could they not be? He says, so what I want to do is I want to set you up at Beth Israel. I want to do a battery of tests and find out what's going on. So 3 weeks later, in November, we're up in Beth Israel, and then we go through the three days of testing, and they get us up on the oncological wing, and now we're in this one room, and there's fellows, and there's oncologists and radiation oncologists and thoracic surgeons. And I grabbed one of them, and I said, what do we have here? And he said, you have esophageal cancer. I said, is there a cure for what we have? He said, no. Do we have a year? No. And when that happened, when he said that, life turned on a dime for us. Sarah heard it. We looked at each other. We got up. We just left them. We went down and found our car. We were like numb. We got on Route 3 going south, and what do you say? And she said, Chris, I don't care about me. I just care about you and the kids and the dog. And with that, we both start to cry. I can hardly drive. We get back down, and so we tell the kids, and we make a plan. The plan is we're going to be a team. We're going to take care of Sarah. She's never done anything to deserve this. We're just going to be there for her. So we start with the port with the chemo and the tube because she can't get food down. Then she has a blood clot, and we give her shots. And we called ourselves the volleyball team, and she was in our bed in our house, and we would rotate in. So always there was somebody at her head, so if she was in danger, needed something, we'd get it for her. And we did little things like she loved Coke. And so we'd get these little 8-ounce cans of Coke, and we'd get a glass full of ice, and we'd pour the Coke into the glass full of ice, get it really cold, and she'd drink it down all in one gulp. And, of course, there's whoever's at the head of the bed with the bedpan is ready because 15 seconds later, it had to come right back up because, it had nowhere to go. She loved that because she loved the carbonation and she loved the coldness. She says, I just love that so much. But that was as close as she got to food for months. 30 pounds down, 40 pounds down. And then we finally said, somebody said, maybe you can get a stent in her and then we can get some food down. So we found a doctor, Dr. Spillane over in Cape Cod Hospital. And so we get on the ferry. They put us on early. She lays with her head in my lap. We go over there, and Dr. Spillane comes in, and he sits on the examining table. He doesn't even want to see her. He says, okay, I think we can get a stent down there, and then you can get some fluids in. And Sarah says, wait, Doc, fluids? What about solid food? He said, no, I'm sorry. And then she sat for a moment, just like this, and then she said, okay, doctor, we're done here. Chris, will you take me back to the ferry? And we got in the car, and she said to me, no more chemo, no more radiation, no more shots. I just want you to make it so I don't feel pain. And that was the 1st of July, and I took her home, and I told the kids, and we had, thank God, we had Bill's wife now, the nurse. She called her pretty little nurse. That was who would take her to the bathroom and take care of her. On the 8th of July, she said, I'm going to be on to other adventures soon. Imagine the courage to say that. And then she said, I'm kind of curious how this is going to go. On the 10th of July, she said, you were my angel. You all are my angels. Well, we were her volleyball team, and she knew that we had taken care of her. On Saturday at 6:10 on July 12th, I'm outside in the living room, and little Sarah's in there at the head of her bed, and the doors slammed open. She came running out and said, she's gone. She's gone. We all ran in and lay on the bed with her. She had left us. And when people die, they say, they're in a better place and she's at rest now. Well, okay, maybe, but I think she'd rather be alive. But they forget about the people who are the caregivers. That was no fun. We weren't in a better place. We were drawn. We were exhausted. We just lost somebody we loved, and we were just trying to get our bearings. And I have a picture from the next morning, and we just looked like we had all seen ghosts. We were just trying to stabilize and imagine what life would be without her. And so in the next couple of days, I was realizing how personal that had become, and my thoughts went back to Claudia. And I thought to myself, I had no idea what it means to fight cancer, to be in that situation, to have your life turn on a dime until it happens to you. And here I am, less than 1 year after I was sitting out there listening to Claudia, thinking life was great for us. And next thing you know, we went through the whole thing. She got diagnosed. I've lost my wife. They've lost their mother in less than a year. I got to tell that story because it can happen to anybody. So I went to Jim and I said, Jim, do you mind if I do that why I swim? And he said, well, tell me. I said, well, I told him the story, and he said, okay. And so I went in and I brought this picture and I held it up inside that tent. And I said, you see this? This is a volleyball team right here. This is the group, just like Claudia's cronies. My daughter had said, Dad, it was the worst of times and it was the best of times. And what she meant was it couldn't get any worse than to watch your loved one die. But, when you are together taking care of somebody who you love, you are in love with everybody that's working together with you. And life is so precious. And so when you have a chance to do it, what a crazy circumstance to become closer. But it just told me that I had to tell people in the audience that you all in your house have a picture like this of your family somewhere. And that is your volleyball team. That is your team that you need to be close to love, to tell that you care, because you never know when life is going to turn on a dime. You never know when you're going to need each other to take care of you. So the silver lining to my story is that, yes, it's the worst of times, but the best of times is when you learn to love and be careful for the ones that you love the most. And in this time, even though we can't touch each other, we can call each other on the phone. Grandparents and parents love to hear from kids every week. Keep the contact, care for one another. We're an island, but we shouldn't live like an island. We should care for each other. That's my story, and thanks for hearing it.
Oh, Chris, thank you so much. I think Sarah heard you. It's beautiful. So Chris and Sarah actually moved to Nantucket full-time in 2005, and they owned a store called the White Whale. Is that right? The White Whale. He is also known, I learned, as Captain Scallopini, because he makes evidently very festive scallop shell lights. So if you guys are ever out there and you hear about Captain Scallopini, it's not a child's cartoon book character. It's actually Chris Farley, who you just heard. And what a reminder about the important work that Swim Across America does. You guys, it's an amazing event that happens every summer, and you should all go out for it. It's wonderful. Thank you so much, Chris. Incredible Christmas message. Okay, we're going to bring John Shea back to the stage. And the saga continues.
Wow. All right, so look, on my birthday, the silver lining from my split pants and all that was that they called me, the Yale Drama School, from the Yale Drama School, and told the head of the theater that I had been accepted in the school. So anyway, I go down to New Haven, and I start in September. I come to Nantucket in that summer before, of course, like I've come almost every summer of my life. And but I get into New Haven, and the bad news is that I don't like the acting program there. No, it's disappointing. It's very restrictive. I see that all the best minds that Yale has to offer are not available to the actors because the program is so rigid. And so I say to the dean, I'm going to quit. And he goes, what? I said, no, this is Robert Brustein, the head of the school. He said, you can't quit. I said, all right, well, what am I going to do? And he said, well, have you ever written anything? And I said, well, sort of. He read what he said, well, you're not a writer, not yet anyway. He said, but I'll tell you what, you're a director. So I'm going to let you transfer into the directing department on one condition, that you work for me in the cabaret and at the Dramat, at the Yale Repertory Company, the professional company. You can be the assistant director on all the plays there, and you have to be in some of them too. And I said, okay, it's a deal. So I transfer into directing. And then so it's a 3-year, at the end of the 3rd year, my class is scouted by other theaters that come up from New York, and they're looking for people to hire out of my class. And so I get an offer to work at the Chelsea Theater at the Brooklyn Academy of Music, which is run by 3 Yale Drama School graduates, Michael David Burl Hash and a guy named Bob Calvin. I become the assistant director. The first production I do at the Chelsea Theater is directed by Hal Prince with music by Leonard Bernstein. And I'm working with Hal Prince and Leonard Bernstein, and I'm the assistant director of a production called Candide that goes to Broadway. And I think, wow, this is how it works. You just work with geniuses, and they get great reviews, and you ride along for on the coattails. And the next play is a play about the American Indians. It's called Dawn Song, but the real American Indians are really upset that they're not being cast in it. And I'm reading opposite all these actors who are going to be in the play, but you know something? The American Indians are not trained well enough to be in this play, and so it's really tough, and they cancel the play. And the director turns to me, Bob Calvin, who the artistic director of the theater, he says, "You're fired, by the way, as my assistant director and my casting director." And I said, "What?" He said, "No, you're fired." I said, "Fired for what?" He said, "Because I want you to read this play tonight. Go home and read it. It's the next play we're going to do instead of the Indian play, and I want you to see if you want to audition for it." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, I can see you're reading opposite of these other actors. You're an actor. What are you doing in this directing thing?" So I go home and I read this play, and it's by Isaac Bashevis Singer, who won the Nobel Prize. And Isaac Bashevis Singer has written a play about a woman who wants to be a rabbi and study the Torah, and it's called Yentl, the yeshiva boy. And so I go in to audition, all right? And I the next day, or a couple days later, and I audition opposite 500 other guys that come from all over New England, all over New York. They come in from all over the country to audition for the same part. Not to play Yentl, the female lead, to play Avigdor, the male lead. Now, there are guys who look like him. It's set in a yeshiva. They've got payas. There are Hasidic Jews coming from Williamsburg to audition for this. And I'm, a Yankee, like Catholic kid from, I can say, Shushipi Adamani Sacrificium de Maribus Tuis, but I can't say Baruch Atah Shalom Aleichem, So, 500 guys later, I get the part. Tova Feldshuh is cast opposite me. I am the only Christian in an all-Jewish cast at the Chelsea Theater, and Bob Calvin directs it. Clive Barnes comes from the New York Times. He raves about the play. It says I'm splendid. And Cheryl Crawford comes, the woman who founded the group theater and the Actors Studio with Lee Strasberg, and she says, "I'm taking this to Broadway." We write to Barbara Streisand, who owns the rights to the short story of Yentl, the yeshiva boy, and Barbara Streisand says, "You can do it." And so we open on Broadway. Now, I'm 26 years old. I've been out of Bates for just a couple of years, out of Yale for like 2 years. And suddenly we go to the, Eugene O'Neill Theater. And it's magnificent. It's bigger than the Yale Rep and the Yale Dramat. It's got 2 balconies, and it's named after Eugene O'Neill, my favorite playwright. And so I do this play. But to get into the part, I've had to learn how to be a Jew, okay? And that meant getting in disguise as a Jew, letting my hair grow, the beard, letting the payas grow, wearing a yarmulke, dressing as a yeshiva boy, carrying the Torah around, going to Williamsburg with Tova Feldshuh, who has disguised herself as a boy to be with me because, of course, girls are not allowed in the yeshivas. We sneak into the back of the yeshivas. We pretend to daven with all the rabbis in the schools. And I realize that acting is like spying. It's like detective work, and it's so much fun. It's so much more fun than directing. I feel the hell with directing. So, anyway, we're on stage, and it's huge. and it's Broadway, and at the end of the first act, there's a big wedding, and Tova, Yentl, who's disguised as a boy, is marrying a girl, but she's secretly in love with me, her best friend, but I don't know that she's a girl because she's in disguise as a boy, and there's this big scene. We do the matinee, and it's great. And after the matinee, before the evening performance, we all go out like we usually do to Jimmy Ray's on 8th Avenue and 46th, and we have a bowl of chili and a couple of cups of coffee, and we go back to do the evening show. Halfway through the first act, I'm not feeling too good, and I haven't had a beer. I left all that behind at Bates. I'm like, something's not quite right. And so I find myself over to the Proscenium March at the very end of the first act, and I'm kind of hanging on it for support as I'm feeling kind of weak-kneed. And now there's coming the big scene where the wedding is taking place, and now there's got to be the dance, and there's this scene where Yentl yells over to Avigdor, dance with me! And she comes over, and she sees me on the arch, and she grabs me, pulls me to the center of the stage, and we start spinning, arm in arm in arm. 50 people on stage, you know, and I am getting sicker and weirder, and the whole world is spinning, and there's 2,000 people in the audience, and the whole thing collapses the way it's supposed to, with her passing out on the floor on my lap, and at that moment, I realized, the chili is coming up. And so does Tova Felshu, who's lying in my lap a foot away. And the line at the end of Act 1 that brings the play to a close is, "Kiss me, Avigdor." So as I lean over to pretend to kiss my friend Tova, the chili beans are firing out of my nostrils like Gatling guns as the vomit comes into my mouth, and I'm holding it, and it's shooting on like this, and all the lights go down except for the Super Trooper spotlight from the upper balcony. Everybody freezes, and the cast staring at me in utter horror, and Tova, and blackout. And I run to the exit, and I puke everywhere over the backstage. Everywhere. Now, where's the silver lining in that? I'll tell you later.
Oy vey, right? Oy vey. That chili is now known as Yentl soup. I just want you all to know that. That is my pun for the night. I was very proud of that as I stood there thinking, Yentl soup's got to come in here somewhere. That is frightening, John. Okay, I just want to say one thing. Another credit from John. So in the beautiful movie Gray Lady, there's a gorgeous musical score, and it's written by Nantucket's own Andy Bullington. I think many of you know him. Amazing, amazing guy, amazing talent. And that entire score, all the music, is about to be re-released. Is that right? It's all about to be re-released, so stay tuned because you're going to hear that beautiful music again, and that's very, very exciting. Okay, are you ready for our last and a half storyteller? We're going to have one more from John, but first we're going to hear from the wonderful Callan Duke.
George W. Bush said of one of the Iraq wars, either you're with us or you're with the terrorists. In 1990, when I first heard that the U.S. was dropping bombs on Baghdad, I was sitting in my dorm room at the University of California at Santa Cruz. I lived at Porter College, which was home to the university's art school, a never-ending game of hacky sack, and students sunning themselves naked in the central quad. At Porter College, there was never any shortage of sex, drugs, alcohol, and incomprehensible student art. When I heard about the initial bombing, I couldn't believe it. My country was at war, and according to George W. Bush, I was not feeling very patriotic, especially since the only model I had ever seen of a patriot was the conservative folks who worked at the military base near my hometown. And here I was going to one of the most liberal universities in one of the most liberal states in the country, and I was decidedly against a war that our country was fighting in. And so I picked up my backpack and my sleeping bag, and I headed off campus, joining thousands of other students who were fleeing to get away. We walked down the rolling hills towards Monterey Bay, and I met up with my roommate, who told me about her plans to attend anti-war protests in San Francisco, which is a couple hours north of Santa Cruz. And so my roommate and I gathered a bunch of our friends, and we all piled in our friend's Saab to go protest the oil war in Iraq. When I got to San Francisco, I was electrified by the energy of the city. Every day there were multiple protests and marches, and people were carrying signs and singing songs and chanting. The chants were amazing. People were saying things that I'd only ever dared to write quietly in my dorm room for my college essays, and I was surrounded by like-minded people shouting them at the top of their lungs. They were saying, "The people, united, will never be defeated." And "Hell no, we say to war, from the Middle East to El Salvador." I was sure that if we just kept chanting and shouting, that the war would end. And then came the big event, which was the march to the San Francisco Stock Exchange. It drew tens and thousands of people from all over the country. And as I marched down the streets of San Francisco from downtown to Post Street, I chanted along with everybody with my newfound voice, protesting the U.S. presence in Iraq. But when we got to the stock exchange, there was a sudden and clearly unplanned abrupt halt. And so everybody turned around to go back the direction they'd come. There was, in front of us, we couldn't go because there was a police barricade. So we turned around to go the direction we'd come, but now there was a police barricade behind us as well. And there was a stock exchange on one side and another building, and the barricades behind or in front of us, and we were totally trapped. We weren't going anywhere. At this point, a police officer, who happened to be male, grabbed a bullhorn and stood on the hood of a car in the front. And he said, "You're all under arrest for an unpermitted march." What did he mean, we're under arrest? Is that even possible? Weren't we allowed to march? Was it even legal for them to arrest us? I was so confused that even though I was halfway through the crowd of people they were arresting, by the time that I was handcuffed and my name taken down and my picture taken, I was still completely speechless. My arresting officer herded me onto a city bus that was among hundreds that had been commandeered for the situation. By the time I got to my bus, it was already packed full of people. And most of these people were protesters, but there was also a police officer guarding the front door, and then also one at the back where you exit the bus. And also there was a white young man who had a leather jacket on with a big anarchist A on the back, and he was really jittery and wiry, like he had too much coffee or was high. And he was standing way too close to the police officer who was guarding the back, who happened to be African American. And he was poking his finger in his face and trying to provoke him. And he said, "How can you be here today? How can you be working for the man? You, a black man." There was silence on the bus. And the police officer responded evenly and kindly, "We all have a job to do today. You're doing your job, and I'm doing mine." That was not the reaction I had expected. With just a few words, the police officer not only advocated for himself, but diffused a potentially very violent situation. The buses eventually took us to the wharf, and we were dumped into a giant warehouse where there was more police officers. Without any explanation, we waited there for hours as the rest of the protesters were brought in buses. Finally, we started to be divided into two cages, one for the men and one for the women. They called them holding tanks. And They were really just chain link that had been thrown around the pillars of the wharf, and the floor was the cement of the wharf. And it was the cement radiated this bone-chilling, foggy coldness. It was late. It was well into the night. I hadn't eaten all day, and all the adrenaline from the march and getting arrested was starting to wear off. I spent most of that night in that cell, and after several hours, all of my friends and most of the other women had been signed a release and let go. I didn't know these women. I was cold, I was hungry, I was terrified. I sat down on the cold cement and I hugged my knees and tucked my head in and I began to sob. Even though I understood that I would eventually be released, it was the first time, at 18, it was the first time in my life that I'd ever faced any real consequence for speaking my mind, for standing up for my beliefs. And as I was sobbing, I felt this warm ray of light on me. And I looked up, and there was this woman who, I swear she was like 7 or 8 feet tall. And she had this giant wild head of curly blonde hair. And there was this celestial light beaming out behind her. And she reached her hand to me. And without thinking, I let her pull me up. And she said, "Let's play tag." And we did. We played tag, and we played duck, duck, goose, and ring around the rosy. And myself and the few women that were there were enjoying this levity that we had needed so badly. And then suddenly one of the women froze in the cage, and she was looking outside of the cage at a man, and it turned out to be the then San Francisco mayor, Art Agnes. And Art Agnes was surveying us like a proprietary zookeeper, and he began to circle the cage, and we responded in kind by following him, by tracking him as a pack around the cage. At one point, one woman started shouting, "We vote! We vote!" And we all started chanting with her. And then instinctively, we all turned to our curly-haired leader, and she was standing calmly in the middle of the cage with her eyes locked on the mayor. She began to recite, line by line, the First Amendment. And I was so moved by it that I vowed that as soon as I got out of jail, I would memorize it. And I did. And I've carried it with me for 30 years. It goes like this. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Marching and protesting were my right. They're every American's right. It's written right there in the very First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States of America. I realized right then that I was patriotic, and I would continue to be patriotic by exercising my First Amendment right and speaking out at every opportunity I could. What could be more American than that? Don't get me wrong, I have great respect for people who join the military or who go to war to fight for their country. But that will never be how I fight. We all have a job to do. They're doing their job, and I'm doing mine. Thank you.
Oh, Callan Duke, wow. I almost feel like saluting her. That's unbelievable. And I'm just wondering, John, I think your teacher's name was Lavinia Schaefer, something like that? Lavinia Schaefer, was she the curly hair? Did she spend time in San Francisco marching? Pretty sure it's the same woman. You never know with storytelling. That was incredible. Callan has been an international teacher. She's taught all over the world. She's a wash ashore, and she works with Sustainable Nantucket. So look for Callan. That was amazing. Thank you. Okay, you ready for your grand finale? John's going to finish the story.
Okay, here we go. So you remember where we were, right? So, like, how do you get anywhere from there? Is there a silver lining to vomit? Okay. Well, what there was when I came to backstage, they dragged me to my dressing room, and everybody kind of gathered around me during the intermission and said, "You want your understudy to go on? Are you okay?" But there's something of the football player still left in the actor that said, no, that was like a gang tackle. And even though you're bruised and you're limping around with a broken leg and you're feeling like, I don't know, you want to die. No. Like the game must go on, the show must go on. And so I went back out there on stage and I finished the performance. And there was a kind of purity to it. I was empty. And empty was a really good thing, it turns out, on stage. So the other silver lining was that I got good reviews. I won awards. I became a success. I started traveling around the world, doing things, making films. I was in London. I got to see my friend Martin Sheen star in a play at the Royal Court Theatre in Sloane Square, a play called The Normal Heart by Larry Kramer, a revolutionary playwright about a revolutionary disease called AIDS that was taking down lots of theater friends of mine in New York. And I went back to New York. I went back to New York and then came to Sconset. And I was sitting there with my wife, and the phone rang. And it was my agent calling from New York saying Joe Papp had just called and wondered if I would be interested in going to London and playing the lead role that Martin was doing on the West End. Martin got a film, couldn't take it from the Royal Court to the Albury Theatre. Do I want to star in the play on the West End? And that's the good news. The bad news is that I have 10 days before it opens on the West End. Now, the answer is yes, immediately. It's the dream of every American theater actor to want to go play in London, right? And the other good news was that when I bought the play at the Royal Court, the program at the Royal Court, the play was inside it because that's what the British do. They put the play inside the program. So I said to my agent, I'm going to call you right back, make sure I got the play with me, because if I got it, it's a sign from the gods that I can learn this thing in 10 days and open. And so I run over to my desk, I pull out my backpack, I find the play, the program, I open it, there's the play. I call him back and I say, tell Joe Papp I'm in. I get on a plane, I fly to London. I learn the play in 10 days, but there's a scene that I forgot. There's a scene that I have to do that I don't want to do, and I'm reading it now, and I'm in rehearsal, and I forget that I'm playing a gay guy who's in love with another guy, and he's got to kiss him. In a really important scene at the end of the play, I've got to kiss this guy, and I got to tell you the truth, I've never kissed a guy. I mean, like a lover on the lips, as these lovers do at a really important moment in the play. I fail them all through rehearsal. I sit in my bathtub at night all alone in my little apartment, and I'm learning the lines. I got it all down. I got it inside. I come to that moment in the rehearsal every single day. I turn over to this English guy. I cannot kiss this guy. I can't do it, Bunny. I can't kiss him, okay? And now it's 3 days before opening, Mr. Shea. Do you plan to kiss your co-star? And he tells me he's married and he's got kids and he's not gay. I don't care. I'm doing the play because I have a sister who's gay. I love all my agents, my managers, my friends in here. Everybody's gay. I'm not gay. I haven't kissed a guy. And I got to do it in front of 2,000 people at the Royal Court. Now, I mean at the Albury Theatre. The Albury Theatre, now called the Noel Coward, is where Laurence Olivier and Ralph Richardson and John Gielgud have shared the same dressing room that I have, the star dressing room, right off the stage. I am the star. I have a responsibility as an American. I'm waving the goddamn flag on the British stage, having the nerve to be on the same stage as those heroes who did Shakespeare when the Nazi buzz bombs were dropping over London. And what am I doing? I'm afraid to kiss a guy. So I sort of man up. And I say to myself, you know something? Look out. And then the dress rehearsal, they've got an opening house audience. I know it's all sold out. I know. And every night, but I come out on stage and I say, this is the dress rehearsal. There's, 1,000 people in the house. And I realized that a lot of these are guys, and a lot of these are gay guys, and a lot of these are guys who may come down with AIDS and could be dead by the time this run is over. And maybe the story that we're telling in this cautionary drama about two men who love each other and one who gets AIDS and the other guy has to deal with it. My guy, who, by the way, can't deal with anything. He can't deal with emotions. He can't even love his lover the way I can't kiss this guy. And I think, just do the play, John. And so I get out on stage, and I do the matinee, and I turn over, and I, at that scene, kiss this guy. I lay a lip lock on him that he may still be recovering from. I know I have never forgotten it. And I'm very proud of myself. At the end of that matinee performance, I go to Leicester Square, a couple blocks away. I go to one of the sandwich shops. I get myself a tuna fish sandwich and a Coke. I'm so happy. I'm walking like a free man. I go back to the theater. It's the evening performance. There's a full house. And every night I say to myself, but you know, I'm not sure that you're doing it, you're giving it 100, John. Are you really going all the way with it? I mean, did you really kiss him? Did you really love him the way, let's say, you love your wife? And I have to say, in the secret recesses of my mind, no, I'm not. I'm failing somehow. But that night, I get up on the play, and I'm determined to do my best. And I come to this famous speech. And the play, this is on a rake stage. It's all in black and white, where I am saying to my lover, who's there at the bottom of the stage, I'm telling him about all the great gay men in the history of the world, starting with Socrates and Plato and Aristotle, and I'm going through history, and I'm going to Marlowe, but I'm starting to feel that weird, knock-kneed, kind of weak thing, and the gurgling in my stomach, which has started before I even went on, is getting worse. And I'm starting to think, oh my God, it's like Yentl. I can't do that again. I got to keep it down. I owe it to this play, to this thing, to the life that I might be saving by doing this play. But, so I fall to my knees because I'm starting to go unconscious, because now it turns out that food poisoning is something I suffer from. And by the way, when I get it, like I've gotten it on planes flying across America, I go unconscious. I locked myself one time in the bathroom door in a plane. I was there for, 45 minutes. I was out cold, banging on the door, didn't hear a thing. Okay. Now it's the West End, and it's the climax, almost the climax of the play, and it's starting to come on. And I fall to my knees. And I think, John, rally like you did on the football field, like you did backstage at Yentl. And I get on and I go, Tennessee Williams, Andy Warhol. And I fall forward and I go unconscious on the stage. Now, boom, forehead hits the floor of my face. I'm unconscious. My co-star, lover, is staring at this in horror. The audience, of course, thinks that it's part of the play, because this is about a play about AIDS. They don't know, maybe my character's got it. The stage manager, who's right there with the headphones on, the British guy, is like, oh my God. And I'm not budging. So he comes out with headphones on and microphone. He says, ladies and gentlemen, there'll be a short intermission here. Moments, please. Moments. Please don't leave the theater. Don't even leave your seats. We shall be right. And the audience thinks this must be part of the play, too. Because who actually would be unconscious on the stage? And so my co-star and he each take my wrists and drag me up the rake stage, off the stage, into what they call the vomitorium, where I puke all over the back of the stage like I did in Yentl, and they take me to my dressing room like they did in Yentl 12 years before. And now I'm on Laurence Olivier's couch, and I'm in the bathroom, but I've been there and done that, and the silver lining is I know what comes next, Bonnie. What comes next is that empty feeling. And with the empty feeling comes freedom. Remember the end of Braveheart? He's about to be decapitated? Yeah, but there comes freedom. And so they say, do you want your understudy to go back on for you, Mr. Shea? And I say, no way. Because I'm an American and I know this play. And this is a play I'm doing to save lives. And I love that guy. And I had already kissed him. But now I'm coming out to do the final scenes where I have to watch my lover die and actually love him. But the question is, am I actor enough to do that? Because I've never really done it. But that night, I walk back out. It's only been 5 minutes. It feels like 5 years. The audience is still there. Lights go back down, quiet. And we come to the last final 3 scenes where my lover is dying. And all I can tell you is that, like I'm telling you now, I'm crying. Because I'm empty. There's no John Shea left. I am only Ned Weeks. I am that character. I love this guy. And I have the silver lining. And it is truth that comes through me like lightning. Like that poem you read by John Milton. And it's genius because you're not there. It's Larry Kramer going through you, the playwright, and you're just a vessel, and you're done the best acting you've ever done in your life because you weren't acting. And that's all I really want to say, is that if you really want to love somebody, get out of the way. Because love beats on. Thank you.
John, that was exhausting. I think we just had a master class in acting, don't you? I will admit, though, that I will be updating my Expedia account to say, please do not sit me next to John Shea on any flights, ever. That was amazing. Thank you, audience, so much for joining us. All of you storytellers were my silver lining, and you were all gifts to us tonight. Thank you so much. I'm going to have all of them walk by and just wave goodnight at you. Happy holidays to you all, and may you all have silver linings. Thank you. Okay, Lori.